The crude sound of flesh slapping against flesh echoed across the squalid walls of room 104 of the No-Tell Motel. I was bent over on the bed, ass in the air, face buried in the sheets, thrusting back against the Joy Toy as she fucked me from behind. My skin glistened with sweat. Spent inhalers and used condoms were scattered across the floor. Bitch wasn't thrusting the right way. Couldn't get the angle right. I tried to shift and got plowed back into the mattress. You like that? You like getting fucked like this? Not really. The Joy Toy couldn't remember her name. Natasha, possibly? Seemed more interested in getting herself off instead of me. Probably because I'd already paid for her services, and we were coming up on time. Didn't help that neither of us was a good actress. We both knew the sex was stale, despite her best attempts at what evidently passed for dirty talk in 2079. But I needed to feel something that wasn't bad, even if it wasn't good. Wanted this to just be our day. I shook my head clear, forced myself up onto my hands and arched my back so I could better control things. There. That was better. Now all I had to do was get a rhythm going. Focus. Will you sit with me a while? My body suddenly went numb, as if a switch had been flipped. God damn it. Why couldn't I just feel good for 5 fucking minutes? Why couldn't I just forget already? Why couldn't she have waited for me? Hell, I'd waited for her. Sit with me a while. Fucking hell, I would have sat with her the rest of my pathetic life if she would have given me a chance. If I'd opened up to her. Oh fuck yes, you're so fucking tight. Shit. Oh. The Joy Toy hammered into me, burying herself to the hilt. Spurt after spurt of hot synth cum spilled inside of me. Would have to rinse all that out as soon as she left. Finally, she pulled out and collapsed onto the bed, heaving for breath. I laid there splayed out across the bed like a rag doll. Her eyes found their way to me. A few strands of green hair traced across her brow. I went to brush them away before catching myself. That was fun. Yeah. I watched her climb off the bed and get dressed without bothering to wash herself off. Jesus. Miss Studs were supposed to be self-sanitizing, but still. I'd have to get tested later. Could do that tomorrow before my shift. After adjusting her dress and giving her hair a once-over, she grabbed her hollow off the nightstand and started towards the door. Give me a call next time you're around. I offer discounted rates for frequent clients. I squeezed my eyes shut in shame. Heard the door open and close behind her. Silence, or rather what passed for silence around here. Could still hear moaning coming from the other rooms. What a colossal waste of time and eddies. I'd hoped a quick lay would help get my mind off things, that I could somehow fuck her face out of my memory. Fat chance. What I needed was intimacy, to be held and comforted, not sprawled out across cum-covered sheets that smelled like ass and a couple hundred eddies lighter. At least it was the government's money and not my own. The stipend Reed had arranged for me felt more like a slap in the face than a real restitution. It wasn't like I'd done much for them, just rescued the president of the NUSA, no biggie. It took considerable effort to scrape myself off the bed. Couldn't help but feel like an old woman. My muscles were still adapting to a life without cybernetic enhancements. I'd regained a little definition and could now manage most ordinary tasks without issue, but getting railed by a whore had taken a considerable toll. Once I was on my feet, I staggered towards the tiny nook that passed for a bathroom and stepped into the shower. The hot water felt good against my skin. I scrubbed myself out first, taking extra care to get every drop of that synthetic slop out of me, then turned to the rest of my body. Once I finally felt clean, I climbed out and studied my reflection in the mirror. At least I wasn't bald anymore. Hair. That was the first thing I'd taken care of after returning to Night City. Not clothes, food, or a place to live, but hair. I'd had a little fuzz on my scalp, but I needed to feel like a person again. There were a number of Ripperdocs in Watson who specialized in cosmetic transplants. I chose the one who gave me the least shady vibes, slapped a fat wad of Eddies on the counter, and voila, I looked like my old self again. Or rather, as close to my old self as I could get. Still didn't fully recognize the woman staring back at me. Didn't know if I ever would. It was getting late. Chuck would dock my pay again if I didn't get a move on. The Dirty Dick's owner was a frugal bastard. Fucker always watched me while I worked, making sure I watered everything down and that half of my tips found their way into the bucket behind the bar. But it put food on the table, and it was only temporary. I dried off and got dressed. Gone were the days of armor-padded leather. Denim and polyester were my life now. I made sure to give my cleavage a little extra lift and needed every eddy I could get. I grabbed my necklace off the sink, tried not to remember how I'd gotten it, and slipped it over my neck. I fiddled with the settings on my holo, trying to turn off the Do Not Disturb. Yet another inconvenience I had to contend with now that my OS had been neutered. Once I had things figured out, I opened my messages and waded through the various iterations of the offers to enhance my size now. Other than a terse reply from the landlord in Atlanta scolding me for trying to negotiate a better lease, there was nothing in my inbox to indicate I was a living, breathing human being. Nothing from any of the fixers or mercs I'd worked with, no check-ins from many chooms from my old life, which told me all I needed to know about how much I'd ever mattered to them. Even Pan Am remained silent. I still couldn't wrap my head around why she was so angry at me. Like, yeah, we were best chooms, and I disappeared from her life without hardly a word, but it wasn't like I'd planned to slip into a coma and lose 2 years of my life. After everything I'd done to help the Aldecaldos, the least the Nomad could do was pick up the holo and chew me out to my face, instead of having others leave awkward messages on her behalf, telling me to stop calling. Data. That's all I was now. Tied up in a body, aimlessly wandering the streets. I had just tucked my holo back into my pocket when it buzzed. I waited for the avatar to appear on my HUD. Kicked myself when I realized I was waiting for nothing. I pulled it out and glanced to see who was calling. My eyes widened. Judy. It couldn't be. Except it was. That was her name, her profile pic, on my screen. Why was she calling me? Had she had a change of... No, I couldn't think that way. Had to decide whether to answer or not, fast. My holo had rung 4 times now. 5. About to go to voicemail. My finger hovered over the screen, less than an inch away from the woman who I had thought would be the love of my life. A message would be better. Then I wouldn't have to say anything. She wouldn't hear the excitement in my voice.
My finger slipped across the screen. Shit! The room went deadly silent. My breath caught in my throat. I stared wide-eyed at the screen, listening intently for the voice on the other end. Hello? V? Hey, I sputtered, my voice cracking like a little girl going through puberty. That you, Jude? Yep, it's me. What's cracking? I surveyed my scuzzy surroundings. Things are good. What's up with you? Same old, same old. Listen, V, I wanted to check in, see how you were doing. For real. Fuck. Why was I already on the verge of tears? I didn't know what to tell her. What did she want to hear? That I was fine? That I was thriving? That she'd ripped my heart out and pissed all over the open wound? Couldn't say that, of course. She'd called me, not the other way around, which meant that on some level, she still cared. That mattered. Well, I'm struggling, as I'm sure you can imagine, or you wouldn't have called. Didn't get a chance to tell you earlier. They stripped me down, cut out all my chrome, said my brain couldn't handle it anymore. So, my merc days are over. And then I went back to NC to find out that everything had changed, that I'd been evicted, that all my shit was gone, and I'm struggling. More silence. I waited for Judy to say something. The words had burst out of me as if a dam had suddenly given way. Good thing I'd plugged it when I had. An entire ocean of emotion was waiting to be unleashed. Couldn't do that to her. Didn't know that, Judy finally said, sounding somber. I'm sorry, things have been hard. Not your fault. That's what I was supposed to say, right? How about you? I deflected. Sounded like things were going pretty well. Judy's face and those big, beautiful eyes of hers brightened. Indeed they are. That's why I'm calling. We're gonna be in your neck of the woods a couple weeks out from now. Top secret work stuff. Wanted to see if maybe you wanted to catch up a little. You want to meet up? I mean, if you want to. Her offer hit me hard. There was, of course, the drama between us and all that came with it. But just the fact that someone, anyone, still gave a shit about me. That they even knew that I existed. V? I choked back a sob and nodded. Sounds preem. Send me the deets. Will do. I'm glad I called, V. Didn't feel right after we spoke last. Glad you called too. So, you said we. Guessing your wife will be coming too? I winced. That one came across sounding something wicked awkward. Should have held that one back. Yeah, V. She's coming too. Look, I know there's more we gotta talk about. Can't chat right now. Got some things I gotta do here. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I acted when you called before. I wasn't expecting to ever hear from you again, and it's okay. I cut in. I get it. Would have thrown me for a loop too. Really appreciate you calling, Jude. Thanks. Okie dokes. I'll throw you the deets once I got 'em. Till then.
Judy's face vanished, but I could still see her face on the screen. Closed my eyes. Still there. I drew a deep, shaky breath. Tears prickled at my eyes. I tried to gather myself together, managed to make it out the door and down the hall. But right when I reached the lobby, my throat suddenly clenched up. I tried to fight it back, failed. I shuffled off to the darkest corner I could find and began crying. I was happy Judy had called. Meant she hadn't completely stopped caring about me. But I was sad, too. It was yet another reminder of how much I'd lost, that I'd been left behind. A couple wandered past, holding hands. They both wore rings. Were they lovers who'd slipped free from the shackles of their marriages for a discreet romp? Or perhaps they were a couple, the sort that got turned on by banging in a seedy motel. Didn't matter. They were together. No matter what their story was, they had each other, even if only for a few minutes. And I had no one. I had to get out of here. Not just the motel, but Night City. There was nothing for me here anymore. I wiped the tears from my eyes and brought up the landlord's message. I could barely cover the lease. Would have to survive on a steady diet of water and ramen for the foreseeable future, but it was still a step up from the Roach Motel I called home over in Northside. More importantly, it wasn't in Night City. I'd been to Atlanta once before. Place had let me down. At least now, I knew what to expect. I typed quickly, afraid that if I slowed down, I might change my mind. Hit send without thinking. There. Done. 2 weeks. Perfect timing. Judy and her wife would come out to visit. We'd do the chat thing, try our best not to make things any more awkward than they already were, then go our separate ways. Again. Except this time, we'd both be leaving Night City in the dust. Just as we'd always planned. We just wouldn't be leaving together. Story of my life.